Hello again, guys. So today the stream title, as you can see, From Prison to Asylum, a personal life story. I will talk about something that happened with me, like in my life. And it's basically like, especially from the time 2011 into 2013. I mean, big part of me never wanted to talk about this part, but since Assad has left the country, the previous president of Syria, and he is basically a war criminal. I will talk about everything about that, because like part of me was just hoping that this part will basically like over time will fade and disappear from life, and I will just move on and forget about everything about it. As you guys, as some of you know, I don't think anyone knows, I'm an asylum seeker in Canada. Now I have the Canadian citizenship, but before that, I'm an asylum seeker, which means there has to be a threat on my life where I can't go back to my own country to get accepted as an asylum seeker. So hopefully you guys know what is the definition of asylum. That's basically the definition between asylum and refugee. Refugee, you just go and apply. Or like asylum, you have to prove that there is a threat on your life. So my journey through Syria and beyond, from prison to asylum, personal life story. So why now? Basically, I will be talking about 2011 till 2013, what has happened, and what led to the decision of moving to Canada in 2016. And before moving on, I would like to just give like a background about Syria, because I'm assuming the majority of you actually don't know anything about Syria. That's what I will assume. So Assad's family. Assad is like the previous president of Syria. He left a couple days ago to Russia, and he came after his father died. Bashar Assad came after his dad passed away, his father. His name is Hafez Assad. And Hafez Assad came in a coup in 1970, where he was the defense minister. And he took down the country with a bunch of his friends. And ever since then, he became the president. And he set some military rules that most of them was still applicable until 2011, where like stuff like the martial, the martial laws, where like anyone can be sued basically anyone will be put into like a military judge if they have to do anything that where they accuse you of like something like treason. And most of the treason is basically you criticizing the president. Not just you criticizing the president, you not snitching on someone who did talk in politics. As we all say, like in Syria, you never talk about politics. No matter what happened, you don't talk about politics. Talking in politics will put you beyond prisons. In prisons that you will never like imagine. And he set the rules as like in 1970, and in 1982 in Syria there was like a revolution. It started in one of the provinces there called Hama. And basically what he did, in 20 days, he surrounded the city with all the military in Syria, and he started bombing non-stop. You can Google Hama 1982 to 1983, where like he put pretty much half of the city down because they criticized him. Is like, because Syria is a Republican country where like everything comes through election, everything comes through democracy. And after couple years, around 12 years, there was like no election. In Syria, the election is basically you go, and then the election, basically they give you a paper, they ask you, do you want the current president? And the answer is yes or no. If you put no, you will be immediately arrested. And if you can Google throughout the results in Syria, you would see that the Syrian president has won the election with like 130%. What does 130% mean? That means you have to go and vote for everyone in your family, even the dead has to vote. So if you don't go to vote, they will actually come and arrest you because you have to go and vote with yes. There's no other option. So in 1982, he basically in 20 days, him and his brother is basically like living as an asylum seeker in France. His name is Rafat al-Assad. He's a business. He's one of the richest people there because he was able to leave with like lots of money when he left Syria. And basically, Hama was set to the floor, to the ground. Basically, he killed everything, and after they destroyed everything, they went to the city, half of the city. They took half of the men, put them through in jails, and those men will never be able to come back. Not just that, they had some gang rapes where every woman was raped that time in 1982. How nobody knows about that? Basically, there was no social media, there was no news. And in Syria, there is no news until 2013, where like the only two channels we know is like the government channels. That's it, nothing else. To get other access to other channels, you have to buy the satellite, and buying the satellite before 2003 or 2007 was forbidden. You can't have it because the president has a conspiracy theory that if you own a satellite, you might be spying on him, or spying on the army, or spying on his people. So some conspiracy theories. Now, Syrian political climate during 2011 and 2013. In 2011, after what we call it the Arab Spring, where like lots of revolutions started in the Arab countries, where like we said no more to the dictators. So in 2011, revolution started in Syria, and we're basically a bunch of school kids at the age of 8, 7, and 9. 7, 8, 9. I think one is 10. Wrote on the walls of a school, "System down, Assad down." That's all they wrote. They wrote on that on the wall. So the government reaction was they went and to basically know who were those kids, and they arrested those kids. Talking about 7, 8, 9, 10. 4 kids. 4 kids outside 6 kids. I don't have the exact number because it's like they arrested the kids and their friends, and basically they tortured them by pulling their nails, so they would set an example into making people fear the government again. Because after the Arab Spring, we were saying like no more fear from the government. So to that point, and that thing kind of spread it out in Syria, and everyone just the mass protests started around the country. We're talking about more than 90% of Syria had protests against the government, because like that was just a brutal reaction to a bunch of kids just watching the news. Because in Egypt there was a revolution that started a couple months ago, and people who were just watching the news, they just like heard these words on the news, like, okay, the kids like, okay, people in Egypt wrote on the school, "System down, president is down." So they just did the same, and we had a brutal reaction from the government. And basically, if you protest, you will see some tanks attacking those massive protests. You can go online and you will see them. And from 2011, it was the majority was, by the majority, I mean everything, was peaceful protests. We would just go and protest, changing. Our demands was like, just change the constitution, change the system, because the constitution is set for a military country, and we're no longer a military country. Yes, Syria had war in 1973. Syria had war in 1976, 7. So we would understand that, okay, we need a military constitution to we were like, because you have to change the majority of the rules to set the current state of the country. And back then there was lots of support, so people would understand it. But until 2011, it does not make sense, because the last war that Syria had was basically in 1973, and the government had like a brutal reaction in the majority of the country, where like they had answered the question. Okay, can you guys time him out? As I said, if you don't read the rules, go read the rules. Just time him out. That's why I hate like putting it at just chatting, because I don't want like random people to just spamming random questions. Last time chatted, pretty much. So yes, basically we had peaceful protests against the government. Yeah, no worries, Molly. Appreciate you being here and listening. we had peaceful protests, and the government had a massive brutal reaction where they want to kill at least in every protest, like their minimum was at least they want to kill around 20 to 30 people at every protest. And we're talking about 1,200 protests a day if we're talking about every piece of land in the country. So you would have at one point more than 1,200 points of protest, where like every town, every village, every city, every major city in the country would have massive protests. And their government reactions like keep killing people until people start fearing the government again as they used to before 2011. And that's one of the reactions. The second reaction was put people in jail. And not any jail, the secret intelligence jails. And I don't know if you guys have heard about the Syrian intelligence jails. Whatever you hear about the concentration camps back in Germany in up to 1946, it's the same, and I will tell you how and why. The most common presence in Syria, there is two prisons. There is Tadmor prison, and there is Saydnaya prison. And now if you go on the news, you will hear a lot about Saydnaya prison, because people are trying to get people out of this prison. And the problem is that the prison is basically 7 floors below the ground. The third, fourth, fifth, and seventh below the ground, they have secret doors where people can't access those. So they are trying to get people out of the prison, but they can't. They don't know. They see that there is like what do you call them? The hoses that get the smoke outside the kitchen. Nambol. Okay, guys, take it chill. I will answer your questions after. If you keep spamming stupid questions, I will time you out. I will answer your question if you have a question. Yeah, the ducts. So they see that there is ducts coming outside with the smell of sweat and vaporing water. So they know that there are people still, the exhausted chimney. They know that there is people down there, but they can't reach because they don't know the doors, because the doors for those floors are hidden doors and they can't get them out. If you go to the news, CNN, Al Jazeera, you will see what I'm talking about. So I'm just giving you headlines if you want to Google and go and search by yourself. What's the main issue with those prisons? Those prisons are, for every room, let's say the room is 4 by 4, they will put, imagine a room 4 meters by 4 meters, which is probably half of your living room. More than 100 people will be put in there. And for the torture, you can imagine any torture method that humanity ever came up with, and it will be there. We're talking about shocking people with high voltage electricity. We're talking about, they call it the German chair, where they attach you to a chair and then they break your back. We're talking about hanging people from their rest, like they would hang you from your rest for 2 days straight. And after 2 days, your rest started losing, where you no longer have your arm, and your arm will be basically loose. And the only way to fix this is through years of rehabilitation. So these were the main torture methods in those prisons. And we're not talking about 1, 2, or 1,000. We're talking about 400 plus, more than 400,000 people were put in those jails. Let's talk about who built those prisons. The main architect or the main engineer for those prisons, his name is Alois Bronner. He was a high-rank Swedish officer and key architect of the Holocaust, responsible for deporting over 100,000 Jews into concentration camps and extermination camps. This person fled Germany after the Second World War, and there is like lots of reports said that he was like traveling between countries, and Hafez al-Assad, which is the previous president of Syria, met him in Egypt, and he offered him asylum in Syria, where he provided him with the protection as long as Bronner advised on torture techniques in exchange for the protection until his death. I think he passed away around 2006 in Syria, but this is like some rumors. It's not 100%, but this person basically is the person who built those prisons. I'm talking about not just those two, the ones I mentioned here. Tadmor and Saidnaya, basically all the secret service, all the intelligence, the secret intelligence presence, everything, every torture method were taught by this person. Now, this is just a general idea. Yeah, where is my experience in this? Late in 2011, I was arrested by the government for protesting in a college camp, and I was sent to a prison for 52 days. We're talking about late November until early January 2012. The reason, there was no reason. The reason that I was accused of protesting without a proof. But the main thing, again, with the Syrian government is that they don't need a proof. It's anyone saying anything about you, you are guilty until you're proven otherwise. You're not innocent until proven otherwise. No, you are guilty until proven otherwise. So the dungeon, or like the prison we were in, we were 2 floors below the ground. So we've never seen the light in those 52 days. And the room was 4 meters by 3 meters. The toilet is in, and the water we drink is the same water from the toilet. And we were 76 people in that room. So how could a room that's 4 by 3 fit for 72? You stand, you don't sit. You stand there and you sleep while standing. You sleep while standing. So for those 52 days, how was the torture? The torture is not just like they physically torture you. Yes, I was there. They don't just physically torture you. What they used to do is, so yeah, the main method of torture, they would take someone out and they would torture them for hours in front of all of us, so we could see. It's not just like, okay, yeah, so it's your turn for getting tortured today. No, they would open the door, they would keep torturing people for hours in front of us, so we would see it. Lots of people died there. I was one of the lucky ones to make it. Maybe so I can tell my story one day. The prison condition is basically the worst you could ever imagine. We're talking about dungeons that never see the light. So you would see people injuries getting infested with rot. Like you would see an injury getting rot, and the injury would start getting bigger because the atmosphere is full of germs. It's basically like the most unsanitized place in the world. And you would like know that this person is going to die just from getting like a small injury. The small injury will start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then until they pass away. And you could see that in your eye, and you can't do anything, because if you complain, if you ask for medicine, you will get tortured by the same way they would torture them. And this, I'm a man, so we could eventually take it. The worst part was, if you are a woman, they would gang rape every woman in prison. And not just that, to the point where like some of them would get pregnant and then they would have birth in prison, and that child would actually stay in prison forever, and that child will never see the light again. And if you watch the news now, there is a very trending picture, which is this child. This child is born because his mother was raped, to the point where like she got pregnant and in jail. She was giving birth after. The kid made it alive, because some people, not everyone die. Okay, we say like, I'm a religious person, so we say you don't die until it's your time to die. So we say those people made it because it's not their time. And you could tell that this person never seen the light. I would share a story. There was one of the oppositions in Syria. His name is Michel Kilo. Michel Kilo was in Sinai prison, and at one point, his the detective that was responsible of him asked him to tell a story to a kid that was born in jail, and he was like, there was a sparrow, and he was like, what's a sparrow? And he's like, how am I supposed to explain something to someone, something that's so basic, to someone that never seen it or never get the chance to see something that's very common, that's everywhere, a bird? He's like, what is a bird? He's like, there was a tree. He's like, what's a tree? He's like, okay, let's talk about the sun. He's like, what is the sun? That person, like that child, never seen the light, never seen what is outside the dungeon itself. So I stayed there for like 52 days, and I finally made it out, because they were telling us, some of you will make it out to tell those stories to the people, so they keep fearing us forever. Like some of us made it out, not because we were innocent or we were not guilty. Sorry, we weren't guilty. No, we made it out because they wanted us to tell this story. And that was the main reason I've never told this story, because they wanted us to tell this story so other people can fear them. But today, Syria is free again. The president has fled, and his entire regime is going down. Welcome in inadequacies. So after 52 days, So after 52 days, January 17th, 2012, I made it out. And 1 month after, I was told that the government want me again and I must flee the country. I refused to flee the country because my main thing was I was an activist against the government. I was like protesting against the government and tried to do everything in my control to protest peacefully against the government. So my main thing is like, I don't want to go back again to jail, so I need to relocate. And my parents tried their best into like relocating me in places where like the regime doesn't have access to, or like the regime doesn't have the power. As an example, in Damascus, the regime used to be very powerful, but in the north, the regime is not as powerful because the regime in 2011, 12, 13 was much focused on protecting his own, his capital, because as long as they keep the capital, as long as they are in charge, as long as they lose the capital, they are no longer in charge. That's how it works. So I relocated in between 7 to 8 times for like the next 2 years. And in those 2 years, like my main fear is like, I don't want to go back again to jail because I don't know how I made it out. And today, okay, let's move on. The last place I was in, which is Enkhil, which is my hometown, my home city, the regime took it over, and they were looking for everyone they want, and they had like massive lists, and the list is basically every person, every kid above 16 and every man below 70. That was like their list, okay? And like their main process was like, their main plan was like, arrest everyone, torture them. If they confess, that means they are guilty. If they are innocent, that will be proven otherwise. But the problem is they keep torturing people to the point where like they will ask you to confess to stuff they want you to confess with. They would be like, okay, you are an American spy, and it will be like a challenge between those officers that everyone that's like, okay, the officer will be like, I can challenge you that I will confess this person to say that they are an American spy, and they will keep torturing you for hours until you confess whatever they want you to confess. Once you agree to once you confess, they will send you to execution. And lots of people, execution, getting executed was the merciful situation for them. So after the regime took my hometown, my last place to stay in. I had to move on, and I have to leave the country because my main plans, like my main thing was like, okay, I don't want to go back to jail, and I want to protect my sisters. And I think I talked about it a couple years ago. There is a video on the Twitch. I think if you go to highlights, scroll down, you will find it somewhere. So the families were not safe after taking down my hometown. So my father was like, okay, if you don't want to go to jail and if you want to protect your sisters, you have to leave the country. And I left with my sisters to Jordan, where we stayed from 2013 until 2016, where I get asylum and relocating in Canada, which is basically 2016, where I started my new life and was planning to move on. I don't want to talk about what happened because the main reason they let go of me is that they want me to tell the story so other people can fear them. And my main reason is like, I don't want to tell the story because I don't want people to fear them again, because I want the revolution to stay for the people who will ask me. It's like, okay, Yasser, is this true? I would be like, what do you want? Do you want your kids to live this life, or you want your kids to live better? So if you want your kids to live better, just keep the revolution going. Don't try to tell the message they want you to tell. And until this day, what I have done, I don't think I've talked about this, but I'm currently working on 2 books. I finished one, and I'm looking for a publisher, which talk about the 52 days I spent in jail with the people who were getting tortured the most. Not everyone. I apologize to my mates in that dungeon, because I wasn't able to write everything about them, but I was able to record the worst parts. And I've been like looking for a publisher the past 8 months, and another one which is the experience of the fear, the fear experience, which is after I left the jail, before I leave to Jordan. What happened in those 2 years, and like, what's the main thing? It's almost done, and hopefully I can get to publish both of them. And in the meantime, as I said, I'm looking to translate them both to English. But I think it's still too early to talk about this. But basically, maybe one day. And I even told the publishers, like, I don't want any revenue. And my main goal is like to expose what's happening there, like what was happening to the people who were there, and let the world know their crimes, because this person is still alive. I think Russia said that they gave Assad and his family asylum for a humanitarian reason. The person who tortured more than 600,000, the person who killed 400,000 people just from 2011. Just from 2011 until now, he killed 400,000 people. We're talking about 12 million displaced people. And if he could do more, he would do more. And why do we leave our countries? This is basically the last line I had on my book. And I had to answer this. Why did I leave my country? And the main reason was the kids, the young kids. We move forward in the pursuit of dream for a better life for them. If it's up to me, I would never leave. But it wasn't up to me, as I didn't want my young siblings to live that life again. So yeah, thank you so much guys for listening. And I think I will have to end the stream here. I appreciate everyone who made it today. And yeah, thank you so much guys for listening to me yapping for 40 minutes, I guess 30 minutes.